Hello, and welcome to Stories from India, a podcast where we talk about myths, legends, and folk tales from India. I am your host, Narad Muni, and I'm a mythological character myself. I have the gift of eternal life and knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. By profession, I'm a traveling musician and a storyteller. So the way I'm doing my job is by podcast. In this episode, we are back to the Ramayana. We have done several episodes of this epic before. There are links in the show notes to all of those, but here is a summary of the story so far. Ram was an avatar of Vishnu. Vishnu is the preserver in the Holy Trinity, together with Shiva, the destroyer, and Brahma, the creator. Brahma also happens to be my dad. So, yeah, I am a bit of a celebrity, if you haven't heard Indian mythology before. Ram should have become king of Ayodhya, but in a bit of ruthless power play, one of his father's queens had him exiled for 14 years. Ram went, and his wife, Sita, and brother Lakshman went with him. Ram, Lakshman, and Sita tackled one danger after another. It seemed like an adventure with increasingly difficult levels. All they had wanted was to find a quiet spot, spend 14 years, and get back to Ayodhya. But one excitement after the other presented itself. One of those was Shurpanakha, and then her brothers Khar and Dushan. Ram and Lakshman managed to deal with them easily enough. But the next escalation caught them by surprise. Ravan, who was Shurpanakha, Khar, and Dushan's brother, stepped into the ring. Ravan was the ruler of Lanka and also the mega villain of the story. He was like the boss character if this were a video game. But it is not. And Ravan was far worse than any boss character imaginable. To avenge the death of Khar and Dushan, and to avenge his sister's humiliation, he took revenge. But he didn't come out Hollywood style, guns blazing. No, his revenge was far more sneaky, and it hit Ram where it hurt. Ravan carried off Sita. Ram and Lakshman pieced together whatever clues they could from their vulture neighbor, Jatayu. With his dying breath, Jatayu told them that Ravan had carried off Sita. He tried to stop Ravan, of course, but that's what had hastened his own demise. Ram and Lakshman found Sugriv next, which initially may have seemed like a side quest. But Sugriv and his Vanar army and his loyal advisor Hanuman were to play an extremely crucial role in what happened next. Ram and Lakshman helped out Sugriv with a little domestic dispute by killing his brother Vali. Now, Sugriv's advisor Hanuman was himself powerful enough that you have to wonder why he didn't just solve the Vali problem for Sugriv. Anyway, Sugriv reluctantly accepted the crown of the king of the Vanars after his brother Vali's demise. Or so he said. That unlocked an entire Vanar army that Sugriv dispatched in every direction to find any trace of Sita. Hanuman went out as well, leading a search party in the most promising direction, the south. And Hanuman and his team got lucky. They ran into Jatayu's brother, Sampati. Sampati, the vulture, knew exactly where Ravan lived, and he could direct them there. That's where we will continue the story today. Of course, I've condensed an incredibly complex tale into that summary. So do check out the links in the show notes to previous Ramayana episodes if you want to do them justice. But anyway, we return to the scene with Hanuman standing staring in the direction that Sampati had pointed them in. There, said Sampati. It's 54.8 kilometers exactly as the vulture flies. How can you be so precise? A Vanar in Hanuman's party asked, with narrowed eyes. It's easy. I looked it up on Google Maps, the vulture replied. But that's irrelevant. The important point I'm trying to make is Ravan has taken Sita to Lanka. And just go in that direction. You'll find Lanka. Just go in that direction. That was easy to say for a bird with wings, thought all the Vanars. Hanuman looked in that direction again. Sure, 54.8 kilometers was nothing compared to the distance they had already covered in getting there. But how were they supposed to cross the ocean? They couldn't even see Lanka. What if the vulture was wrong? What if they tried to swim all that distance and not find Lanka? Would they have the energy to swim back? Maybe he could, but he couldn't risk the lives of his fellow Vanars. And Jambavan the bear was part of the group too. Hanuman was pretty sure Jambavan couldn't swim. He did what a good leader would do. He opened it up to his team to brainstorm. I know what, said one Vanar. Let's first build a house. Then we'll fill up a whole bunch of helium balloons and attach them to the house. Helium is lighter than air, so if we get enough balloons and enough helium, we can carry all of us across the sea. And then, when we want to land, we just pop some of the balloons. What an imagination! Have you considered joining an animation studio for kids' stories? Asked one Vanar, sarcastically. I, for one, think we should just give up and go back to Sugriv. He'll know what to do. Going back is not an option. Not when Sita could be so near, replied Hanuman. Near? Yeah, she's nearer than when we started. But that's a big ocean. Even swimming a kilometer across that seems impossible. A serious-faced looking Vanar had been consulting a book. He took off his glasses and addressed the crowd. Good news, everyone. I've just been reading The Idiot's Guide to Boating and Sailing. I think I can build a boat large enough to carry us all across the ocean. And how long will that take? Asked Hanuman, trying to hide his rising excitement. Well, if I have the right materials, give or take 3 to 4 years, replied the Vanar. This time, Hanuman did not hide his disappointment. But a great leader listens to his team, to every member of the team. So Hanuman asked, And do you have any suggestions, Jambavan? Jambavan? Jambavan! The bear finally realized he was being spoken to. As he took off his AirPods, he asked Hanuman, Did you say something? When he was caught up, Jambavan replied instantly, But we already have a solution. Once bitten, twice shy. Hanuman asked cautiously, "And what is the solution you speak of?" "It's you, Hanuman," replied the bear calmly. The Vanar was stunned into silence. So Jambavan explained that what he meant was that Hanuman could totally fly across the ocean. Hanuman had completely forgotten that he could fly. And yes, Jambavan had proof. In fact, he had just been listening to it. Episode 25 of this show, which included a story of how Hanuman had reached for the sun and would have grabbed and swallowed it, but he was stopped by the gods. And in return, he was given not one, not two, but 8 superpowers. All of those superpowers were like the kind that the robots in the Terminator movie had, Jambavan added. The side effect of that incident was that Hanuman could not remember his powers until someone told him the story. And thanks to Jambavan, now he remembered. "Yes, I can. I can fly. I can also walk on water. I can change my size. And a few other things, which I'll skip over because I won't use those powers in this episode. I could walk to Lanka since I can walk on water, but you know what? I won't. That's slow. Besides, it'll be a little bit weird walking on moving water. If it was still, that would be easy. I'm going to fly instead." "That's a wise choice," nodded the bear. "I wish Elsa had thought of that in Frozen 2. I mean, why run across the ocean when she could have just made an ice aeroplane?" Hanuman shook his head. "We'll have to discuss you and your pop culture references. Most Vanars might not understand them. But that's for later. For now, I'm off." And just like that, Hanuman leapt off the cliff. He soared through the sky as if he had been flying every day of his life. He also changed his size, thinking that might help him cover more distance. But there was a catch. He was burning more energy the larger he was. Ant-Man from the Marvel movies got that right, Jambavan would have said if he had been here. So Hanuman travelled in his normal size. But the size change had tired him. And just as he began thinking that he could use a rest, something popped out of the ocean right in front of him. It wasn't a school of flying fish or a whale breaching. It was a mountain. It could talk, and it called out to Hanuman. Could be a trap, but probably not. The voice had appeared friendly. The mountain introduced himself as Mount Mainak. He was particularly cheerful in greeting Hanuman. "Your dad did me a solid. He's been a rock star, as far as I'm concerned." When Hanuman didn't know what favor his father Keshri had done Mainak, the mountain corrected him. He had meant Vayu, the wind god. But didn't Vayu and a mountain go into a full battle mode once? Hanuman wondered. "Yes, but that was Meru. I'm glad you brought that up, because that battle is how the island of Lanka was created. Your dad knocked off a piece of Mount Meru and it fell into the ocean. Not quite submerged. My story is a little different, you'll see. You can use this opportunity to rest. Have a seat anywhere on me. I'll keep the story short, I promise." Hanuman welcomed this opportunity. His ability to walk on water precluded an ability to sit on water, and he could use this break. So he agreed. Minak explained how a long time ago all mountains could fly. They were in the sky all the time, and people were always worried about the sky falling on their heads. Quick sidebar: we have seen that fear passed down from generation to generation, the whole world over, including with the Gauls, as we can observe from the Asterix comics. So, anyway, Mainak explained that Indra, the chief of the Devs, or gods, decided to not let the mountains fly around and park them in specific points on earth. All except Mainak. Indra tried hard to pin him down as well, but Vayu intervened on Mainak's behalf, and Mainak was allowed to move around as long as he stayed under sea level most of the time. So there was no danger of him falling on some people. And that worked out beautifully. Mainak explained that traveling on the ocean floor like a tourist was all he did now. He volunteered to show Hanuman some photos of his trip to the Marianas Trench last year, and then the Great Barrier Reef. But Hanuman politely declined. The Vanar felt refreshed and was now ready to take on the remaining part of the journey. But hey, he would be back again. Maybe they could go on a trip together. See the mid-Atlantic ridge, right? Or maybe the volcanic ring of fire in the Pacific. Hanuman thanked Mainak and moved on. He was just trying to estimate the distance he had covered so far when something else emerged from the water. It wasn't Mainak to say that Hanuman had forgotten his hat or umbrella or something. The creature that arose was far more sinister. It was a huge serpent with long fangs and a gaping, wide-open mouth. This serpent could talk as well. At first, Hanuman simply decided to ignore it and fly past. But the serpent was quick. It very quickly rose and moved so as to block Hanuman. "All right, let's get this over with," said Hanuman. "What do you want?" "I am the ancient Indian version of a firewall. I stop traffic until I get a security token I can trust," replied the serpent. "And how exactly do I get this incredibly bureaucratic security token?" "It's not a physical token. You're automatically granted one when you enter my mouth." "But I can't," said Hanuman. "I'm too big to enter your mouth." Which would not have been a true statement a second ago. Because, as Hanuman said that, he grew in size very rapidly. The serpent, not to be outdone, opened her mouth wider and wider. Her open mouth was looking as tall as a mountain. This is what Hanuman had been waiting for. As the serpent opened her mouth wider and wider, Hanuman suddenly shrunk his size to that of a bee and buzzed very quickly in and out of the serpent's mouth before she could snap it shut. He was ready to move on, but the serpent hailed him in a friendly voice, a lot friendlier than Hanuman had expected. The serpent explained that she was Surasa. She was a daughter of Daksha, whom we talked about in a very recent episode. She had just made up the firewall story. She was here for a very specific purpose. Hanuman sighed. All right, let's fight it out. No, 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 replied Sursa. I'm on your side here. The gods sent me to test you. Some of them doubted your abilities, so they wanted to check that you're up to the task. This was a test, and you passed with flying colors. Hanuman rolled his eyes. I appreciate you telling me, but I don't need the validation of the Devs to know that I'm up to this task. If the gods really wanted to help, couldn't they just strike Ravan with bolts of lightning? Or at least have you firewall him when he was crossing the ocean with the abducted Sita? Sursa couldn't argue against that. Hanuman had a point. Hanuman politely bid Sursa farewell and continued on his way. Finally, success! He could see some land in the distance. That must be Lanka. That lifted Hanuman's spirits. The end was in sight. But little did he know there was danger ahead. To prove that these things come in threes, not just in folk tales, Hanuman saw yet another shape rising out of the sea. It looked like a giant demoness. She was right there, swimming in the ocean. At her size, she was probably standing on the ocean floor. Well, Hanuman didn't care. If he just flew high enough, the demoness, whose name, by the way, was Simhika, would not be able to bother him. Or so he thought. Simhika completely ignored Hanuman. She hadn't even looked at him. He was chuckling to himself that this level was easier than the previous one. He had expected them to get progressively more difficult. But suddenly, he felt something grab him, and he wasn't flying anymore. It was Simhika. She hadn't been looking at Hanuman, but she had been intently looking at his shadow. The moment she reached for and grabbed Hanuman's shadow, his progress in the air was arrested as well. Simhika had the magical ability to control anybody or anything by controlling their shadow. If you've seen the Disney series DuckTales and seen the character Magica Dispel, you'll see that she did something similar. Hanuman couldn't do anything. He couldn't move a muscle. And it happened far too quickly. As Simhika's hand shadow took Hanuman's shadow towards Simhika's mouth shadow, the same thing happened in real life. Hanuman was drawn by a force he could not control. He was swept straight into Simhika's mouth. Unlike Sursa, Simhika was quick enough to close her mouth once Hanuman was forced in. Is that the end for our superhero? Of course not. But I like to end it on cliffhangers, so that's what we'll do this time as well. Hanuman uses all his wits, strength, skills to turn around what would have seemed to be mission impossible. But we'll see that when we continue the Ramayana in a future episode. A couple of notes on the show. Check out the links in the show notes to previous Ramayana episodes, including a few non-Ramayana episodes about Vayu, about Daksh, about Mount Meru, and about Jambavan and Sampati. Hanuman faces a lot of challenges and he overcomes them using the right tool for the right situation, pretty much like the jackal from the last episode did in the Panchatantra tale. The distance between India and Sri Lanka is indeed 54.8 kilometers. It's very likely that back then it was much longer. there are the remains of what used to be a land bridge between India and Sri Lanka. It's called Ram Setu or Adam's Bridge. We'll talk a bit more in detail about that when we get to that part of the Ramayana. The idea of mountains flying and falling on people's heads that Mainak described is probably related to ancient Indian observations of meteors. We'll leave it there for this week. In the next episode, we'll do a folktale again. It's from the southern Indian state of Karnataka, and it features a rather dark twist on the Sleeping Beauty story, and a curious case of mistaken identity that could so easily have been corrected if only people talked to their roommates. If you have comments or suggestions, or if there are particular stories that you would like to hear, please do let me know by leaving a comment or a review on the site sfipodcast.com or tweet at sfipodcast. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get notified automatically of new episodes. A big thank you to each and every one of you for your continued support and your feedback. The music is from purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com. I'll see you next time.